Okay, it's episode 6 of Counterpoints, and my guests here. Well, I'll introduce myself first. So I'm Thorin, hosted this show. Haven't actually hosted it in a long while. I've only done like 5 episodes in all of CS:GO, but just because the game wasn't that big, it's rock hard to get people to come on shows. People in CS don't always understand how to promote themselves as well as they do in other games. Also, you know, about 5 episodes in the history of CS:GO matches the amount of games that I've actually watched, like I've been reliably informed. So, speaking of which, one of my guests is going to be SEMPHIS from Cloud9. So, hello. So he's kind of like, you know, he's keeping an oath of silence because he was actually sworn to that by the monks of Cloud9 after what happened to ESEA. You know, it's like a penance for what's happened and like to really reflect on what's going wrong in their lives and like get closer to God. And speaking of getting closer to God, like we've got Hiko here. He's a guy who, you know, he used to be able to really play that like nice guy card when he's on Cloud9. People are like, oh, I love Cloud9, man. It's like Hiko, he's a really like friendly guy, good streamer. And it's like Nothing, who's like the cool kid, you know. And then it's like Sean Gares, like a really nice guy. I mean, at the time, people thought like SEMPHIS is the asshole, you know. But then what they learned was like the guy who had like the real diva personality, who was just like, I'm not going to stand for this. Like, I'll be in my trailer. Like, I can't play under these conditions. I can't play. Turns out that was actually Hiko all along. So he left like in a storm, and he decided like I'll make my own team with blackjack and hookers. Like that's you, right, Hiko? That's who you are.
I mean, I'm not going to agree with that, but you can have your thoughts.
Where's the fun in that then? Okay. Oh. Well, that pretty much could be the subtitle of this episode. I feel like, don't you think, SEMPHIS? Like, I'm not going to agree with that, but you can have your own thoughts. Like that's our relationship right there, right?
Yep.
So one of the reasons, and it'll sound as though we've set this up now to be a battle about Cloud9. But actually, we had planned to do an episode of the same people here over 1 month ago. In fact, before ESL 1 Katowice. So actually, back when none of the current issues right now were like in everyone's face. Because I feel like as we talk about Cloud9 a little bit, one of the big problems in terms of the PR side, like how people perceive Cloud9, was first of all that FPVOD coming out from ESL 1, where people now think that your team has like terrible communication and they're all just idiots. And then secondly, obviously the most recent results at ESEA. So we can talk about some of that. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was when you're actually both on Cloud9 together, and going back even further, you were back on Complexity, and going back even further, you two were actually together on the Area 51 team at the very beginning of CSGO. Did you two... I mean, I know you're at the very end of 1.6, you were in some team together, right? One that went to some ESEA lands or something?
No.
So it was only like Swag and them that were with SEMPHIS. It was never Hiko?
I mean, do I have to give my analogy right now, Corey? I think I will.
Okay,
Corey almost played in a team with Remix, Schaefer, P0S, and Sean. Imagine, like, you ever see The Green Mile? You know how he has to crawl through the miles of...
No, that was Shawshank Redemption.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Shawshank Redemption. You crawl through the miles of filth. Like, I had to put my hand so far deep in the filth to pull Corey and Sean out of what he was about to play with. And, I mean, I think Corey would agree. Like, originally, that's obviously an analogy. Dazed didn't want to play with them originally. I think they both had really bad computers at the start. And I mean, even back then,
100 FPS. So it was
right. Even I had less than 100 FPS as well. And like Dazed just so refused to play with them that I had to convince him so hard to at least give them even a shot. Like I don't even think he would have played even a scrim with you guys. It was that much against you.
When you guys played together in the early days on Area 51, like we're mentioning here, going into the Quantic era. Is there some specific, like when you told me the story in that Reflections we did, Hiko, of how you like left the team, you actually told me that it was like all triggered basically from Dazed removing SEMPHIS, and then it was like you and TCK, I think TCK were the ones who didn't agree with it or something, and you were going to split the team up anyway. When you said you left in that sense, did you leave specifically because you wanted to still play with SEMPHIS? Is it just that you thought it was an unfair decision, it's like bad leadership? What was it in that sense?
It was a mix of both. I think Dazed was wrong in doing what he did, and I also wanted to play with Corey. Like, even to the very end, and I would still think, like, now, me and Corey are still friends. Like, it's not like we hate each other. It's not like me and him, like, we fought all the time, and, you know, he made me leave the team. Like, it's nothing like that. I mean, for the entirety of my CSGO career, him and I always got along. Him and I always were, like, we could always agree on almost everything, and I think it pretty much showed because I did end up leaving Dazed, and I did leave for Corey and Sean.
Because I mean, Yeah. Go ahead.
It was a weird situation back then because like no one but like when Hiko chose to like side with me, it wasn't so much that he chose like me as like I just want to play with Semphis on the team. It was a really weird situation that people didn't realize because Dazed had talked to Carrie in the airport about cutting me because he was mad at me, and Carrie didn't want to do it, and TCK didn't want to do it. But basically, Carrie and TCK had played with Dazed for so long that they knew like this is going to be a problem like a year from now. Like it's never going to go away because that's not how Dazed is. Like he's always going to be pushing for it. So Carrie said like, I don't want to cut Corey, but if you're going to do something, please like decide if you want to cut him or don't like now so that I don't have to play another season of this like game PMs. And then so basically Carrie didn't really pick a size, but at the same time he knew what Dave was going to do, so he kind of did, I guess. Like he should have, I guess, said no, but then Trey didn't pick any side. Like we asked Trey to join our team when we were forming a new team.
This is TSK, yeah?
TCK, yeah.
Okay.
We asked him to join our team, right? He like when we were making that like next team, but he literally wouldn't like pick a side. Like he wasn't picking their side and he wasn't picking our side. He was just saying like it's dumb. Like we shouldn't like break the team up. But it was too late at this point, and I don't know. I still love TCK and Frost. Like they're like honestly, they're some of like the best teammates you can have. They like never bitch. They don't always do whatever. You can literally tell them to jump out holes on in front with their knife out, and they'll do it and just die. So
I've got a question along those lines. Like, you know how I love my hypotheticals and what ifs. Like, I mean, I love them in 1.6 as well. Like, what if Forrest had joined that team where it was going to be him and SK and Zet and all those, you know, because it's like fun to think what could have been. So in this scenario, yeah, listen, the CSGO landscape was quite different back then. Like, there were only so many elite level teams, and obviously the Quantic team was close to that level, especially having that breakout ESEA LAN. So I realised since then there are results that are at least as good in terms of the teams that came afterwards. So obviously, like making semis of DreamHack Winter with complexity, and then even the tournament you actually lost in the round of 8 where you lost to Nip at ESL1 Cologne. These, in terms of actual context, these were better performances. But even so, that like second place at that ESEA line, beating Very Games, having a lineup which is just done like a decent result at the Copenhagen Games, people could look at that and say that was one of the best NA teams there's ever been in CSGO. And in fact, you know, because it ended so quickly after the best result, then you can look at even say, well, what would happen in the next 3 months? What would happen in the next 6 months? If that team had stayed together, like, could that have been the best CS:GO team ever from NA? Am I being too kind to it in that sense, Semphis? Would it always have had to blow up in some sense? Could it have held together?
I think if like Dazed, obviously like the main problem with the team back then was mostly like Dazed didn't really trust Frost in being the most skilled opper. He didn't like me for obvious reasons, just like being too aggressive or whatever. And he, even though he like thought Hiko was good, he thought Hiko didn't like lurk like as fast as he could have back then. And he thought Trey was like really smart, but he wasn't the most individually skilled. So Dazed literally had a problem with all of us back then. And he was gonna plan on cutting Frost after he cut me, I'm pretty sure, and he was gonna try to get Skadoodle. But if like that lineup magically stayed together, I do think we would have remained like a really dominant NA team where like we pretty much had a lock on the NA scene, and I think we would have continued that like dominance. Will we have consistently won like every international tournament we went to? I don't think so. NIP at the time were undefeatable or like unbeatable. At the same time, it was probably unfair of us to like put ourselves to their standards back then, because everyone was always comparing ourselves to NIP and we wanted to beat them, but no one could beat them. So at the time we just had to like catch up, I guess. So that was obviously a big problem, but I definitely think we could have won a tournament and we could have placed really well at them. We had a very consistent play style back then.
What do you think, Hiko?
No, I definitely would agree mostly. I think like if all personalities aside and everybody got along outside of Dazed and Corey, I could see us being a good team. And I don't think we would have necessarily been, as Corey said, like we would not have like consistently been able to beat NIP, or probably not even consistently be able to come second. And you know, even if you look now back then, like the skill on paper was pretty low. The fact that we were able to win a lot of the times we did is pretty actually insane to me. Like I know that ESCLN that you're talking about, where we were able to beat Very Games on Inferno and Cash, I think it was. Like, we had some crazy rounds from everybody, which obviously...
I mean, wasn't that the series where Frost just got, like, possessed by the fucking spirit of the Orc gods and played, like, 7 times better than he ever has before or since?
Yeah, and TCK had, like, 10 clutches or something that one LAN alone. So, I mean, definitely individual performances. But I still think, like, in terms of being ahead of everybody, sure, we weren't necessarily on the NIP level, but we had enough hours combined as a team where we were way ahead of the curve. Like, I think Corey and myself were, I don't even know how many hours were around, maybe like 1,000 hours, and everyone else had somewhere around like 500 or 600. Right? Does that sound about right, Corey?
We had a lot more hours. We were at least 25%, if not more, like, ahead of everyone else, and not only that, but we were like huge nerds. We were going to servers, and like at 5, Hiko would wake up for work because he had to work back then at like 6 a.m. and me, TCK, Dazed, and Carrie would be in a server, literally just throwing smokes. And that's something you don't really see anymore, like from these top teams, including my team, like NIP. Like I know for a fact these teams are in servers at fucking 4 a.m. like throwing smokes and shit. Like that's gone from the game. I mean, granted, you know a lot of the useful ones, but that's something that like I kind of miss at the same time. You know, just having that type of nerd team where everyone is just like willing to just basically do nothing but devote their like life to CS. We didn't even get salary back then. We got no money. Tournaments were fucking a joke. Like I don't know. It was just different time.
Because the thing is, obviously, this is all in important context for anyone who doesn't know the history of it, because if we're going to talk about the modern NA scene, that team breaking up obviously then indirectly formed the next two big teams. It formed the team that became iBadPower, and obviously you guys were the complexity lineup. In terms of it, if that didn't happen, like you kind of made the point there that your team had the NA scene on lock, in partly because of that, because like the rivalry was spawned out of splitting up that team, you know. And it's hard to imagine a world, for example, where like Sean Gares would have gotten like Skadoodle and Anger and those. Like I doubt he makes a team with those guys and leads them or whatever. So there probably is no rivalry. So when this rivalry occurred, where Dazed goes off and takes like the guys who used to be in the Curse NA guys and the Dynamic guys, gets all those guys in his team, and then you guys have the complexity core where you had Swag at the time. When you have these two different lineups, to people on the outside who weren't from NA, people just like took the perception that, okay, the iBadPower guys, they're like the young guys who are the source players, they're just the aimers, they're like the guys where, because it's Dazed, the perception was almost like they're the guys who are kind of like the assholes who just play to try and be the best and that's all they care about. And then the perception of the complexity guys was like, okay, these are like the X 1.6 players, you know, not everyone in the team is like a super skilled aimer, but it's more about like the team focus and trying to have strats and be like a real team. And so I feel like the way the international results played out made that storyline quite convenient, you know, that like you guys did better internationally, but then domestically at home, iBadPower would beat you guys. What in terms of how you two thought of the teams at the time, was there any kind of like identity of the teams like this, the two different teams? Is that like making it too black and white?
Well, back then we beat them actually at ESA lands. It wasn't like after when I started calling and stuff, where like later down the road where they beat us almost every time. We actually had the edge in NA and internationally, I think, with the complexity lineup. And
early on, yeah, obviously early on. And I think
like you said, when we were more tactical, that was something that we've never been able to like reach again. When we had the Brax Jordan lineup, like you can ask Hiko, like we sucked really bad. Like we barely made any lands at the start, but like we somehow like made everything work around the time we needed it to work. Like the Bootcamps helped a lot. We really like solidified our style like right before DreamHack. A lot of our strats finally came together. Like Brax and Hiko were really hard to work with at the start because they're obviously both like slower players. I'll say Brax has a little bit more of like a scrim style where like he'll randomly pick up an op or like want to push somewhere. But in general at the start, it was like, for example, on Inferno, like Brax would be the banana guy, but he wasn't going up banana and like getting info. He was sitting at the bottom, like T-ramp. He goes bottom of hall stairs. And then basically you have me and Jordan and Sean kind of being the trio going together, getting info. So it took a while for like, I'm sure like, it's not either of our faults, but it took a while for I think Hiko and Brax to be able to play off us three and us to realize like what we need to do to like get them in positions to make them useful. And that took a while. But then obviously when Brax left, it kind of ruined everything because there's not another player like Brax that's going to fill that role. And that's not even me saying like Brax like the best player in NA or something. Like he's obviously really good. I just mean his play style, you can ask Hiko, is very unique. It's not something you're going to find from another player. It's really just there's only one of them basically type thing.
That's why I'm a bit surprised that you say like those are the two players you had to kind of like integrate into the team, because actually when I think of that team, like actually Pete, listen, I think Shroud's really good, all the rest of it, but if I had to pick one of those complexity C9 lineups, I'd say the one that you had with that team where you had Swag was the best one. Like that was the one where it looked like that had the biggest upside, like people fit the roles correctly. Like one of the issues I think Shroud sometimes has, he's really good, but I think it took him a while to figure out what his role was going to be in Cloud9, whereas actually you say there you had to integrate them, but I always thought Hiko and Swag were like the most reliable members of the team. You know, you knew pretty much what you'd get from them performance-wise, where they're going to play, how they're going to play.
Yeah, I don't think Hiko needed to be integrated as much in that lineup. He kind of like he did his shit. It was more like making Brax work with another slow player because Brax had never played with someone like Hiko at the time. So I think it was more like making Brax good. I think he was very average when we first started playing with him, and even in the boot camp and stuff, he wasn't like making big plays or like having huge impact. It took a while for that to happen, but I think Hiko was doing pretty much good the whole time. It was just I think it was more on Brax to get like fitted in the team. And like you said with Shroud, I mean, Shroud's super insane. He's got better aim than Brax. He's got real sick aim.
Sure, yeah.
His flicks are insane. Like you said, like we originally when we played with Shroud, we thought he was like a lurker, kind of like with what he was doing on Monezuma, and that's not really what he wanted to do. But he's a very passive type of person where he's not going to be like, I don't want to do this, I'd rather do this. So we didn't really know that, and then we found out like he didn't really feel comfortable being a lurker. So then we changed it. Now obviously I'm like the lurker, which that's not my natural role either.
Yeah,
but it's like it's you know, it's not that like I always pride myself on kind of be able to do anything, but obviously it just takes time. Like I'm not going to be a get right in like one event type thing. Like it takes time to like learn, especially on LAN when things are different, like how to do everything. But yeah, I think Shroud's slowly becoming better and better and better, and like the more comfortable he gets in these spots, the better he's going to become.
Was there any way, Hiko, that you guys could have kept Swag? Like, do you think? Like, I know the way he left was in quite a shocking manner. Like, he sort of just let. It's almost one of those things where behind this, if people who don't know this, it's not like behind the scenes. It was like a negotiation. Like, oh, I'm thinking of leaving, and like, you know, what can we do now? It's just like he sort of was like, right, I'm going. See ya. So I realize it's not like you had a chance to, but is there a way that he could have, he wouldn't have left? Because from the outside, it seems weird that he would leave. Okay, because I get that. Like skilled players usually have a bias towards skilled players themselves and think like, oh, if I was with all the aimers, like, you know, all my problems would go away, we'd all just kill everyone and shoot everyone in the head. But your team in theory had the better results, so why would he leave in that sense? You know, was there a way to fix it?
I don't necessarily think so, because like Shroud, Brax is the exact same way. He's not going to like come out and be like, yeah, I don't like this person, especially not to their face at least. So the fact that he left, it was just out of the blue. Like we got home, like everything was good. I think it was like me, Jordan, and Brax were rooming together. Like we were talking the entire time after we had placed fourth. And we get home and Brax is like, yeah, I'm leaving. So we all kind of assumed that Dazed got in Brax's head or something, or, you know, they convinced him somehow to leave. But, you know, now obviously talking to him and Dazed and all of the other guys, it was his own decision, and I don't think there's anything that would have made him stay. Like, he was completely set in stone that that's what he wanted to do, and he did not want to stay. There was nothing that we could have done to make him feel better or make him feel more comfortable to want to stay.
And me looking back at that, I honestly think one of the reasons was he actually wanted to play a lot of like Hiko spots, I think, like on T and CT, and he knew that, like, this is just my like speculation, but I honestly think that he knew he was never getting Hiko spots and T, at least the T ones. I mean, there's always room for switching stuff up on CT, but a lot of stuff on T doesn't get changed really, especially when, you know, you've been lurking holes on T Inferno like your whole entire life. There's no point in putting Brax there, especially when our T-side Inferno has been good. And I think he knew that. And on Iba Power, he was going to basically get everything he wanted. Just Dazed would just cater to him because he had to, you know. I mean, and Brax knew that. So,
because like I realized that in terms of later on after Swag joined, they won like ESEA etc. with him. So in theory, later on, it did become the case that someone could make the case like, oh yeah, iBuy Power is actually better than Complexity at the time. But at the time, you guys had the international results. The fact that Swag left and joined iBuy Power kind of also makes people from the outside think that at least within the community, people in NA for some reason thought iBuy Power should be the better team. Like, okay, even if they haven't actually done it yet, they should be better, and like they have a better future, and they could be the great NA team. Is this just naive from outsiders? Like, is there anything to do with that? Do you think as to why he left?
I mean, it's not like a player's not going to leave a team that is considered the best at the time for a worse team. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So I would actually agree with you that I wouldn't be surprised if people thought that at all. Like, Swag, who probably was our best player at that time, I think he left right after the first Katowice, right?
Yeah, that's
so, like, at that tournament, he had such a solid performance, and maybe that got to his head a little bit, or maybe, you know, whatever it was, that actually pushed him to make the decision to leave. I would not be surprised if people actually were like, yeah, you know, iPower should be the better team. Swag, their best player, left the team, and now look, he's making this kind of super team with all these other players, like Dazed. So, yeah.
I mean, if you just think about the identities of the teams, like I said, when people looked at them, it looked like iBuy Power because they had all these aimers were just like the run and gun. Like, I think Dazed has even openly said this. Like, his philosophy on CS is just trade kills. Like, if you do your peaks, and then if one of you dies, the other one trades and gets the kill. You know, that's how you advance across the map. That's how you get into the end game situations. Whereas, like, in theory, Cloud9, it looked from the outside was like more trying to be like a mini European team. Okay, we're gonna have like set strategies, and we're gonna run these certain things over and over and over, and try and just execute the strategies. So I could understand why you internally would think that was like a superior style, because that is the way to improve. You know, it's the way to get better and to evolve as a team. Whereas that aiming style, unfortunately, you will like they saw, you always live and die on your aim in that sense. If people's aim goes to shit, well, you're nothing to fall back on. You don't have any strats. You know, so. When you saw all those iBuy Power lineups fail in that sense, and your team was doing better, did you guys think the same way, Semphis? Did you think to yourselves, like, you know, we've got the better philosophy to the game, like, we're just going to stick with our core, and this is how it's going to be? Like, was there never, like, for example, could Cloud9 of that era never have just, Complexity, could it never have just gotten someone like Skadoodle into the team?
It was hard because we were all 1.6 players, so we were all playing the 1.6 style back then, more we'd rely on, like, no one dies in the first 30 seconds of the round. We take control of an area. We maybe do a fake, or we run an XE with smokes. We had a couple dry walks. Everyone in 1.6 had a couple dry walk strats, but we generally stuck to like a lot of smokes and grenades, and we saved and stuff like that. And I don't think we ever deviated from that until I started calling. Honestly, we kind of stuck with that format, but as we've seen goes, it's not always the best one right now. Like, being able to run like a 5 smoke execute on cash, it just becomes obvious, you know, like people over rotate and to A site, and you just run into 5 players. So right now, I actually think like that style's phased out a tiny bit, but I don't think we ever would have picked up someone like Skadoodle on that lineup.
I just laughed because we were pretty certain for a while, at least we would troll about it, that we thought Skadoodle cheated at the very beginning. Like, we thought for sure. Like, when he first started playing CSGO, he was so good, and we were convinced that he cheated. That anyone that, I think in all of our minds, anyone that would have played with Ska must also be a cheater. And we ended up not respecting any of those guys, at least at the beginning. So there's like no chance that Skadoodle would have joined our team. Definitely not even after Brax left. Like, it would have had to take one of like the core players leaving in terms of other than Brax to actually consider getting Ska, I think.
And he would have had to done, like, he didn't start doing good on LAN until later too, I think was another thing, is like, whether we truly believed he cheated or not, like, we definitely thought he was bad on LAN. Like, that was a fact. And now he's obviously proven that he's able to like perform pretty similarly. I mean, it's hard to say anyone makes a direct transition to LAN. Like, I always feel like everyone's a little bit better online. Like, like like myself, everyone. It's just
dude. Even those Fnatic
comfy
players.
at
Remember
home,
when they first
but-
made that lineup and they just tore everyone up like to a way that obviously they were never going to do on LAN.
Yeah, they're like 16-0ing Nip and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
everyone's better in theory.
Yeah, because you're just at home. Like it's just, and if you have good ping at home, I mean, that's an even bigger advantage. I mean, most of the players that are a lot better on LAN are usually people that are playing with like bad conditions online.
Because one of the things is when I think of that era of the lineup when Swag left, when that happened, I actually kind of thought like your team's kind of fucked in a sense. Like I can't, for that point, I kind of put like a ceiling on your team at that point in time because I thought to myself like, okay, the DreamHack Winter run where you made the semis. If we're being honest, a big thing that helped there was because you upset Very Games on that one map, that close Inferno game in the group stage, that gave you the side of the bracket that amazingly ended up being essentially just you and Astana Dragons and the team that became Dignitas. So, yeah, listen, the best of 3 win over Astana was legit, but actually if you look at the way their team went over the next few months, they were kind of like, they weren't quite at the Nip and Very Games level. They just were still at the ranking because of their previous tournaments.
Yeah, they were hyped before that tournament to be a top 3 team.
But the way you guys beat them as well kind of made it look like, yeah, okay, maybe they were a bit overhyped there. So I never really thought that top 4 was like, yeah, they are the 4th best team in the world or whatever. I thought, okay, they got a good upset and then they got the right bracket. Okay, so going forwards, when you had the Katowice tournament, which what's funny is you made it around. You fell out around earlier, but actually looked better as a team because you had the awesome performance against Nip. But then when I looked at the performance against Nip, it's like obviously Brax went completely fucking insane on that Dust 2 game. So that helps, obviously, and then that's the player you're losing. So I kind of thought like, well, really the one big X factor in this team is Swag. Like if he could somehow play close to that level every time, now there'll be a real legit team. Whereas the other members of the team, like I'm not expecting Sean Gares to change. I know nothing's not going to change because I've watched the guy for 10 years, you know. Semphis is going to be the similar level. Okay, Hiko's actually at that time Hiko was getting a bit more legit. I'll give you credit. That's where you were establishing yourself. So, but the problem is there's not that many areas to go up beyond like the team concept. Like there's no individual levels going to really rise there. So I didn't know you'd get Shroud, obviously. So the point I'm trying to get to here is the obvious thing to me at that time was like, since we can't afford, like we can't cut any corners on this team, we need to have the best players we can and have this style that still works. Listen, to me, Corey, the obvious answer was you have to cut nothing. Because if I look at the players, he's the one that was really inconsistent back then. And then on top of that, it's quite famous, I think, outside the team at this point, that like he was never that good at actually playing within the team concept. Like he didn't always know his role, or he wanted to switch his role, or he maybe wasn't very attentive to coming to practices. I mean, I understand, I realized it was a different world back then. So why is that like not a real option? Why not remove nothing at this point in time?
I think there was a good case for wanting to remove nothing before. I mean, we didn't really get any salary. He didn't really care that much. Like he was just come on late for practice. He didn't care that much. Honestly, Hiko will vouch, like, it was pretty bad. Like, it was like I was mad almost every single day. Everyone was like just pissed off. Like, it was really bad. But once we started getting like more salary, he's lately, even since Hiko's left, he's been like pretty good. Like he comes on every day at 4 p.m. We play till like 11. He's not doing anything weird. He's there, like, yeah, we have a dinner break now, which helps, like, so everyone has time to go and get food, but other than that, we're playing. So I think in terms of like dedication, he's improved like a ton. But back then it was really just annoying to play with. I'm not gonna lie, like it's hard to even defend him, but it at the same time, I think he's improved a lot lately. But
I mean, going even one step further, though, like, it's not, I don't even think it's that hidden information anymore that we did try to replace him. Even back then when you were talking about, like, the second Brax left, we all thought, okay, like, we need to replace Jordan. Like, this is not going to work. Jordan needs to go. And we came into a situation where we're like, well, okay, we realized this, but who can we really get to replace him? Like, there was nobody really that fit his role and what he was doing and that got along with us to make it be like, okay, we'll just get rid of Jordan, we'll get this player, and it'll all be good. Like there was too many risks involved that we weren't willing to actually. I'm not going to say we weren't willing, but some of the team wasn't willing to actually, go all in with it. So, yeah, I definitely agree though. Like that's, if there was ever a time where Jordan needed to be gone, it was at that moment when Brax left.
Because that also plays in, Semphis, to the whole notion from the outside as like just someone looking in that, okay, the thing with this team is they're going to try and stick with the same core players. You know, like the one thing they don't want to change is the variable of the players. Like they like the players they've got, they get along with them, and even if someone like Nothing has issues like we're talking about here, then no. And listen, let's go beyond the practice thing. He even had issues in game. He would be wildly inconsistent. When he would change these roles, sometimes they worked for a week, they didn't work the next week. In that sense, if you keep a player like that, it's almost like you're saying, okay, I realize he's got all these flaws, but we're just going to try and work around them and just hope for the best. Okay. In this, can you see where this perception will come from? Is any of this accurate? Had you just gone all in on the idea we're just going to keep Nothing forever?
I mean, I think like I don't think that like Euro teams have like the best. Every European team doesn't have like the perfect five either. Like a lot of times I feel like people put C9 on like this fucking giant pedestal of just being like the most insane team ever, and it's like, all right, well, if I went out in groups like 3 times in a row, why are you expecting me to win the tournament now? Like, is it that much of a surprise? And like, when I'm going to tournaments, I'm trying to win, and we're putting in all this time and effort and stuff, and I want to win. Truly, I do. But at the same time, I just don't understand like why people still hold us to like a top 3 standard type thing when we haven't proved it. And when I think of like someone like Jordan, it's just like, yeah, like sometimes he'll overpeak or something. Same with me, and like make mistakes, miss smokes. But European players do that too, but just no one ever fucking calls them on it. Like, you'll see some dude wide peak an Opper and just fucking get killed, but there's never a thread about it or like post about it. Like for some reason, like Titans goes out at groups in the last major, like they fail at like 3 tournaments in a row. They have Kenny S, the best fucking player in the world, and they barely get any shit compared to my team. Like it's insane. Like in comparison, like they have like maybe 1 thread, it's gone within a day. C9 has like fucking 15 threads, 4 on Reddit. There's fucking crazy ass Twitter comments. It's like, all right, like I know that we have stream numbers and I know that we have big personalities on our team that people like, but I think a lot of the hate we get is unjustified.
Okay, listen, hate is unjustified. I can agree with that. Like, even if you dislike something, you don't have to be like, fuck you, like you betrayed me or whatever. But saying that though, I think you painted it a bit unfairly there. Like, let me put it like this, Semphis. Okay, back when we were talking about just a second ago, back when it was right after the first Katowice and Nothing's in the team, and you know, like he goes and Swag goes over to iBuyPower. Okay, at that point in time, like we're saying, it's not like you could just be like, well, we're going to make the super team and we'll bring Skadoodle in and we'll bring Swag back and we'll bring AZK. You know, obviously you can't do that at the time because maybe those players wouldn't have joined. But if you look at Cloud9 now, in as much as because of the iBuyPower ban, basically you're the only team with any history, right? The name of Cloud9, and you have the core players who still at least have results. So if you look at that team from an outsider's perspective, they look and they say, right, well, Cloud9 must have the most money and they have the pedigree and they have the experience. So to them, it makes sense that with all the NA talent, the best NA team should be Cloud9. Like, you should be putting all the best players into this team, making the super team, and then that team should be able to win a tournament or place top 3. Like, listen, right now it wouldn't, obviously, if you just made the team over tomorrow, but listen, agree or disagree, with the talent that is in the NA team, if you made the right 5-man lineup, it would at least be possible to place top 3, right? At a big major tournament? Did you not agree with that? I mean, maybe you don't. I want to know.
I mean, I just feel like it's hard to say. Like, iBuyPower had a lot of really good players, and like between us, like Cloud9 and iBuyPower, before they got banned, we had the 10 players that had the most experience and stuff. So with them being banned, like anyone that you pick up is just a risk technically in terms of, will they play like the same on a big stage type thing? I don't know. Like,
okay, but there's 2 players not in your team right now, Semphis. Hiko and Skadoodle, and they have none of those issues. They're both really good players. So can you understand from an outsider's perspective where it's like, well, if Cloud9's the only like legit chance to be the best team, like why aren't they in this team?
Yeah, I suppose, but I mean, you have to also think if they want, like Hiko said, I mean, if Hiko doesn't want to play with Jordan or something, or like Ska doesn't like people on the team, then I mean, like, what are you going to do? I mean, we haven't asked them to join, but at the same time, would they? So, I mean, it goes, I mean, yeah, in theory, you could have like the most insane lineup, but it's not always possible.
So, Hiko, explain that to me then, because like, he's made a good point now that's actually led to what I'm kind of saying here, which is, if it's like, it should be obvious that Cloud9 is the best available organization to join at the moment, the best team to join in terms of like, you've already got something in place there, like you've got players that you would keep from the foundation. So why would two of the best NA players, you and Skadoodle, not want to just join this team tomorrow and like let's get started on like the work of making a championship? I mean, there's some reason why you guys don't want to join.
So there obviously is a history there. I do not agree with you that you say Cloud9 is the only org that has a structure or whatever.
I mean, existing structure.
I still wouldn't even agree with that.
Like, what do you mean by that? Come on, then, unpack that.
No, I won't go into specifics, but I will say that the way that everything happened and the way that ultimately I got out of Cloud9 was less than desirable, and quite frankly, like that's not what I want to be a part of again. Sure, when my time in Cloud9 was good, like Cloud9, Jack, the management, they treated me well, but after that, after everything that happened, and after obviously there's there's problems that I can't talk about right now that happened that will make me not want to play with Cloud9 again. Not necessarily the players, but maybe more so the organization.
So when you announced you were leaving, like it was like that scene in Full Metal Jacket, like in the night they came in and put a blanket over you and all beat you with like bars of soap inside of towels, and they were just like, "See you night by Paul, motherfucker." And then it's traumatized you ever since then, Hiko.
I mean, no, and obviously not like that, but my point being is there are other organizations out there that I've been in direct contact with and that I've known for a long time, that I would feel more comfortable being a part of. And again, that's not saying that Cloud9 is a bad organization. That's not saying that Jack is a terrible person. That's not saying anything negative about Cloud9, more so than my experience in leaving, and all of the stuff that goes along with that. So your question originally was why don't you and Scott join Cloud9?
Why don't you guys, if you're the best players outside of Cloud9 and Cloud9 in theory should be the best, why isn't it just a done deal? Because there's no options right now as an outsider.
Okay, so obviously as an outsider, you don't know what I've been working on. You don't know what Scott and I have been.
I don't know shit, mate. I think if we established anything, Corey, I don't know shit. Like I don't. I make things up. I just I imagine games that happened. Actually, I was wrong, Hiko. Like actually, Cloud9's awesome and they're a really good team. And it turned out SEMPHIS won in the end. Like I was proven unanimously wrong, and I'd like to take this moment to apologize. Like they actually are a really good team. I should never have called any of them shit. Like they're all fucking awesome players. And yeah, anyway, continue, Hiko. Continue. Yeah.
So it's
just good timing. So it's just a good timing,
So okay, so it's obviously it's a two-part kind of problem. Like there's obviously the lineup problem and there's the org problem. So even if assuming Cloud9 was good, or assuming even like, hey, we're gonna pick up shop and go to
Europe,
whatever it would be. Like the problem still lies within like the roster.
So Hiko, let me be direct then in asking you this question then.
Okay.
It sounds from your answers so far and from this kind of history we've built up of like the way the team was formed, the way it stuck together, the way it stuck with certain players, the way certain decisions, it's sometimes that a decision wasn't made and that kind of was the decision of the team. Like, okay, we could go this way. Nah, let's stick with what we got. It sounds like when you left, that's also something you didn't really want to be a part of anymore. Like you don't want to just keep waiting on the same so in the case of nothing, waiting on the same player to figure something out or to improve in some particular sense. Is this an issue for you? Like, if you going forwards, it has to be a team that's done in a different way. What is it you didn't like about Cloud9 in that sense?
So essentially, like, and I would be the first person to admit, like, I played very bad towards the end, but we all played very bad towards the end. Like, it was nobody's fault that we lost. I'm not going to sit here and blame Jordan. I'm not going to sit here and blame Shroud or Corey or Sean or whoever else. Ultimately, we placed last at 4 events in a row after boot camping for. Like we were in Europe for a full month. We placed last at like 3 events in a row. Cloud9 was willing to increase our salary just to make sure we were happy and just to keep us. And in my mind, like to not have a result-based salary or a result-based compensation at least, in my mind, it's like selling out. Like it's like, okay, well, I can keep playing on this team. I can, obviously we've talked about this before, Duncan. Like me staying on Cloud9 in my mind would have been like selling out because I felt like I could be doing better. I thought the whole team could be doing better. We could have improved. We could have made the changes that were necessary. Even our manager at the time, and like we had problems that could have been kind of alleviated if things were handled differently. So they weren't handled differently. Our salary was about to be increased, and obviously, like, the easy decision or the easy way out would just be like, oh, you know, darn guys, nice try. We're just going to get better eventually. You know, let's just keep it, you know, stay a team, and let's just keep trying to work on it. Well, that's not the way I felt. I felt like we plateaued. We weren't getting any better. It was only going downhill from there. And like certain changes needed to be made that people weren't necessarily on board with. But even then, like, I don't know if that would have even helped the situation at all. So, yeah, I mean, the hard decision was to either stay on Cloud 9 and collect the paycheck and be happy and, you know, kind of coast along with it, or take the risk, leave everything I have built up for the past 2.5 years and try to make something else. And obviously, like, I didn't leave Cloud9 knowing I was going to join iRivalry. I did not leave Cloud9 thinking like, oh, there's going to be this sick team. They're going to have a spot for me, because actually, initially, iRivalry did not have a spot for me. They were actually going to stay with Nitro, and I was going to be teamless. And I even I think I told you back then as well, like, I would not have regretted my decision, even if ultimately I was teamless and had to sit out for a while. Like, in the end,
you wouldn't have, in the sense that you didn't. Why wouldn't you regret the decision? Like, imagine that scenario. I mean, that actually did happen, ironically.
Right,
but obviously at the time you didn't know that. Why wouldn't you have regretted it?
Because I am definitely towards the higher end of the age scale. I mean, I'm 25. It's not that old, but in terms of like these 18-year-old kids, it's pretty old. I know I don't have that many more years of playing CS, and ultimately, like, I don't want to call it wasting time, but not working towards winning a major, just working towards just coasting along is like, if I end up having to retire and having like that thought in the back of my mind, like, oh, you know, we didn't make that decision at that moment, or I didn't leave at that moment, and, you know, it ultimately meant I couldn't win something, then I would have had to live with that for the rest of my life. So even being teamless right now, I don't think, if you told me that, listen, the iRivalry player is going to be banned, if you leave the team at this moment, you're going to be teamless for the next 6 to 8 months, I would have been like, even looking back, I probably would have done the same thing.
Semphis, in this world that he's describing, like his perspective on the team and the issues they had, if I connect that to like my own storyline and the things I like, my analysis on the team, or the things I have to guess and speculate at, it makes it sound like Cloud9 in general either doesn't really look towards like hard roster moves. Like, you more think that like the only way we're going to improve is by changing something within like a tactic or someone's position. We're not going to just like chop and change a player and try and change in that way. And also there's the idea that, well, he's saying here, like, part of the reason he wanted to leave like this, even if it was drastic, is the idea that if I've only got a few years left, I'm going to try and make it so that at least at some point in this I can be on the best possible team I can be on. I can maybe win a big tournament. Now, obviously, the implication in an unfortunate sense for you is it makes it sound like maybe Cloud9, that isn't the number one focus. Like, listen, to a degree, every pro player wants to win, okay? Like, every pro player when he's at the tournament is going to be into it. When he's playing like a certain key opponent he thinks he can beat is going to be into it. But there's like a famous saying, okay, that like half of victory is actually like the preparation you do before the game or something, you know? It's like the hard decision you make before you even got to the tournament, like to do extra practice here or to do some very hard practice regime or something. Does Semphis actually want to win as much as everyone else? Like, are you and Cloud9 really that committed to, like, at all costs, we will do whatever it takes to win, no matter who we have to cut, no matter what we have to do? Is that really the philosophy at Cloud9?
Well, we always, like, put in a lot of effort for, like, playing and stuff. Like, I think you're right in the sense that we mostly, when we lose, try to fix it by, like, a tactical aspect, or, like, maybe someone doesn't, like, our CT size are bad, maybe we want to try putting someone else somewhere like that, but our consensus isn't usually to blame someone and cut them. I mean, I never thought that's like a good way to go about it either. I mean, sometimes a player doesn't work, or like, I mean, not that I've never cut someone from my team or something, but I think if every event you lose, you cut someone, that's not a good idea. Obviously, like, after a while, changes do have to be made. But I definitely don't agree with the philosophy of just like, oh, we lost 2 events in a row, let's cut someone. Like, what about Titan? What if they cut Maniac? He's been playing really well lately. He sucked for like a long ass time, you know what I mean? And so it's like at what point is the player responsible for being bad, or maybe just not being comfortable, or not hitting his peak, or maybe he's just having a bad 3 to 6 months. Like I don't really get all this like roster change stuff sometimes, because whereas I see merit in it sometimes, I don't get. Are people never allowed to have a slump? Are people never allowed to do bad? Like, if Hiko does bad for 6 months, should we have cut him? Like, you know what I mean? Like, at what point do you give someone, oh, he's been good for 2 years, and now he's playing bad for 3 months? Do I cut him now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do I cut myself for playing bad? Like, I just don't get the timelines that people say on forums and stuff sometimes.
Okay, I get that, right? But here's the thing. To me, your two teams... Again, it's like a difference of philosophy. I think you both went too far the other way. Like, to me, iBuyPower was the team where it's like after one bad tournament, they might cut you. After some small internal issue that probably could be worked out, they cut you. Meanwhile, Cloud9 to me is the team where it's like, I mean, you'd almost have to like kill someone else in the team to get cut yourself. That's how it feels from the outside, you know, like certain members in the team. Look, the reason I always bring up nothing is because I don't know what more someone could do to get cut, Semphis. Like, not want to turn to practice, not be doing their job properly, not be performing in the game properly, not even sometimes be doing their role within the game in an actual tournament, like not knowing the strategy halfway through a round, throwing a smoke that was never a smoke, you know. At this point, I don't know what the person's supposed to do to get cut from your team.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think of that? You must have something to say.
I mean, like I said, I agree with back when we weren't getting salary as much and like he didn't care, like he should have been cut. I just don't think
Okay, let me address the actual thing that you said about, like, you know, you don't, like, it's true, it's not always worth cutting someone, and also it's hard to know who's available, right? I get that. But think about this. I mean this is not as like a sarcastic point, a real point, okay? If you hadn't have had players leave, so not out of your choice, then you would have never been able to get Shroud. And we now know that that's obviously been a great thing for your team. He's like the best player in the team right now. He might even be the best NA player, who knows? He's a really good player, but he would have never got into Cloud9, I'm guessing, unless those scenarios happened of other people leaving. So if you'd never been willing to consider a cut, we'd be sitting here now and you guys wouldn't have Shroud. I mean, am I wrong?
Yeah, you're not wrong. But I mean, I think even back then, though, when Brax left, it was a downgrade to Shroud at the start. Like, I think like Shroud is getting like a lot better, and he's getting better than Brax, and he might be better than Brax right now, but I mean, at the time, he was very inexperienced. He hadn't really played at major lands. I don't think it would have ever been a good idea to be like, oh, yeah, you know, Brax, let's cut him and get Shroud because he's like upcoming talent. Like, that would have been stupid of us to do that. Now, obviously, like you said, he left and we picked him and it turned out to be a good choice. But to say that cutting someone for him back then, I think that would have been dumb on our part. He was completely unproven.
I mean, just to interject there, though, we didn't go from Brax to Shroud. We went from Brax to Anger to Shroud.
Yeah.
So it's not like Anger left and we were like, oh yeah, Shroud's like such a better replacement.
That is true. I guess technically we did remove Anger for Shroud. I guess I'd always forget that for some reason, but yeah, I think also with some of like the comms and stuff, like people listen to our ESL 1 or VODs at Katowice, and you know our comms are hectic and people are forgetting smokes and blah blah blah, and people are like, oh, Cloud9 a joke, Cloud9 Bootcamp for a week before the LAN, blah blah blah. Like, the thing that they do not understand is that going into the bootcamp at Katowice, we had everything down from America. We had all our strats down, all our smokes. Like, literally, you know, the cache A take where people throw like 3 smokes at the A site, you know, 1 for highway, 1 for quad, 1 for like the left of site, and then you throw like a molly gay spot, molly quad, and you know, you just go in, you know, like the standard A take. We had all of that shit. Everyone knew everything they had to do. It was all planned. We got raped in scrims. We got throttled by everyone we played. Like,
okay.
we literally never got any rounds on T side. Overpass, especially, we got no rounds the whole boot camp. We never fixed it. So like what ended up happening was we had to scrap a lot of our stuff. So it took us 3 days because, you know, the first day you get there, you're like you're jet lagged. You can ask Hiko, like no one cares the first day you're at a boot camp. Like you're still trying and stuff, but like you can't hit shots. Like you don't know if you're losing because you're missing or like because your strats aren't working. So you have to take like 2 or 3 days to really like settle down. Like, all right, we got to get used to playing these guys. Is it our stuff that's working? Are we missing? Blah, blah, blah. So after, 3 or 4 days, we decide like, okay, like some of the stuff's not working. Obviously a little bit of what we'd had it work, like cash, we didn't have to change a whole lot, honestly. But, like a lot of our stuff did work. Inferno, we were getting throttled. We were getting no rounds on T side. Our CT side, we changed up some stuff. We learned a lot on Inferno, and we thought we improved a lot on it. But playing versus Pro, obviously, we didn't get a lot of rounds on T side, and I get that. But we added that Fnatic strat where, like, Jordan asked about a smoke, and maybe I did too. Like, one day, literally one day, we scrimmed Fnatic the day before the LAN, and they did the strat on us, and we're like, oh, that's a really good strat. That would probably get us like a random round. So we like went over in server, we found the smokes, we added it. So we literally added that strat one day before the LAN. Overpass, during Overpass, the whole entire time we played, we got raped on Overpass. On CT, we did all right, but still, we were never getting like 12-3 CT hats. We were getting like 8-7, 9-6. If we want pistol on first gun round, we could get like 10 or 11, but we were just playing all right on it. So obviously, randoms, third map versus TSM, like usual, right? We get the custom that we played it a little bit. We're not super sick. So I was telling my team, I was like, look, on T side, I don't ever remember getting more than 3 rounds. Maybe we got 5 with like T pistol. I was like I said to my team, like, look, if we want to get rounds, we have to do stuff we've like the scrimmy stuff that like gets like is gonna catch them off guard. Because if we just play our slow default, like we're just gonna get smashed. So like I said that everyone agreed, right? So we lost pistol, and we still got 6 rounds after losing a 1 versus 3 and like a 2 and a 4v4 clean retake when we had the site. So like everything considered, no T pistol, we got 6 rounds and we blew a 1 versus 3 and we had like a 4v4 with the site with the bomb planted and we lost that round. So in my opinion, we had like that was like maybe a 12-3 half if everything went well and we won pistol. But worst case, we should have had like 9 rounds on T side. But obviously we ended up with 6. In retrospect, the decision we made to throw all our strats out the window and like not really pug, like we knew we had done some of that stuff in scrims, and but we were going like balls to the walls, like running through our own smokes and stuff. But I think on that map, that was the right decision to throw everything we had out the window. There was no point in running our slow default. I guarantee you we get crushed doing that shit. Like it had never worked. So then, we had people flaming us like, oh, I want to overpass, like they didn't even know the strats. They didn't even know blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, we didn't because we never did that stuff. But it ended up being good. We lost because we won CT pistol and we got eco'd second round. We got 1 round on CT. That's why we lost. Like, so I just think people are really unfair when they judge some of our stuff. I mean, granted, certain smokes should never be missed. When we played Mouse Sports on LAN, like, we did a T pistol round where I got to pick hall stairs and the jungle smoke got missed, giant gap in it, and the guy kills 2 people, and then I get flanked halls by the lane player. Like that pistol loses us the match 100%, and that is a mistake that should never happen. So I know that we make like mental mistakes, and I know we miss smoke sometimes, but I think people are very bad at judging when it was because we aren't prepared compared to like fixing stuff,
Hiko, when I mentioned that thing there about like essentially in an alternate timeline where certain people don't leave, there's no way to ever get someone like Shroud. I mean, actually, like SEMPHIS is saying here, what he's saying there is also why it would never happen.
I'm in middle something.
Because until Shroud proves himself or does anything on LAN to show it, he's never going to be a viable prospect. You're never going to replace anyone in Cloud9 because, well, they have got the experience, they have been to big LANs. Shroud hadn't done that. He'd only been to like 1 LAN at the time or something. Is that part of what you were talking about in terms of the culture of Cloud9 that like didn't align with you? Because isn't part of the issue that when you're talking about they won't cut nothing in this sense, so we know that certain members won't cut nothing, they won't pick up other certain people, it's certain members who have a certain philosophy on this. Like, it sounds to me like essentially no one's good enough in North America for Cloud9. Everyone who's good's in iBuyPower, and even then maybe some of them are disliked as people. Every rising talent can never get in because, well, it's a catch-22 scenario. They can never get the experience to prove themselves because they can never get into a team like Cloud9. And part of that's that certain members in Cloud9 just refuse to acknowledge that any of these rising young talents are ever good enough. They have to sort of, essentially those players have to be able to beat Cloud9 with less resources, less good teammates, less experience in order to get into Cloud9. There's something a bit like off about that logic,
I would say that definitely has something to do with it. Unfortunately, in CS:GO, for the US teams, like we didn't have a huge pool that we could pick from in terms of already skilled players. Like obviously, towards the end of 1.6, you knew who was good, you knew who was bad. There was a lot more than 10 top players in 1.6. So, in a way, yes, that does make that is one of kind of like the catch-22s was like someone like Shroud. Like we'll use Shroud as an example. If we did not have any other choices, like and we had no other choices, like that's why he would have got the chance. Like it definitely would not have come up like, oh, Jordan sucks, let's cut him for Shroud, or oh, Sean sucks, let's cut him for Shroud. Like we would never have cut a player for Shroud if we had to. That would never have happened. Or excuse me, unless we had to. So, I mean, that definitely was one of the flaws. Is that like we're like no matter what happened, eventually we would have ended with the same players, or because nobody would be willing to make a cut or a roster change. But at the same time, like, can you really? I don't know if that's really necessarily something to blame them on, because like you're not going to just pick up even like Nitro. Like I don't even think I would be willing to just randomly like back before he actually played at that DreamHack where he did pretty good. Like now I think he's definitely.
No, it was the ESEA, the ones that he did really good.
Okay, so the ESEA, like even Nitro back then, like Nitro would have no chance to join our team back then. Like absolutely not. Maybe that's just like the stubborn 1.6 like background of ours, but it's always like you see players. I'm not going to call anybody out, but you see players that are rising the ranks in 1.6, and they turn out to hit like the highest level, like invite. They'll go to a LAN, they'll suck. So I think like part of the reason why Cloud9 and even when I was a part of Cloud9, part of the reason why we didn't want to pick up any new blood was because we were so. I don't think the word is afraid, but we were so hesitant that they would do bad and it would ultimately cause us a big tournament. So obviously
you stick with what you know, right? Like
right, exactly.
When you know you get a certain love for someone that that like if you're gonna pick someone up like Flowstick on Nihilism, like the level Flowstick's gonna give you at lands, even though he might not be like the most skilled player. Like he can play this role really well. If we need that role, we'll get him type thing. But you pick up a new player and it's just a complete question mark. Like maybe he exceeds all expectations, maybe he completely fails you. But I think that's why people have that mentality of like the how like it's like politics in CS. Like oh, it's just recycled players. Well, they're recycled for a reason because you know the level that you get from them.
Okay, Semphis, though, I want to explicitly ask you this though, because as an outsider. I'm going to all cards on the table. I think a lot of what I'm describing here, this philosophy, comes from you. Like from knowing your personality to whatever degree I do. I'm not claiming to like be a super insider who's known you for years or whatever. I know you to a degree and I've seen a lot of interviews with you, etc. You remind me of a certain mentality that has always existed, especially within the NA scene, which was since the NA scene to a degree had some of these problems it has now, but back in 1.6, but obviously scaled to a larger level. Like that, even if there weren't that many great players and that many players who've been in international lands, there was still more at the time that we're talking about than there are in CS:GO. But even so, back then, people who were the established top players, like they were in the best NA teams. It's almost like partly they had a kind of mentality where. Part of the reason they couldn't improve is like they weren't ever willing to believe that any player that they knew before who wasn't good could ever be good now. Like someone like a Shroud. Like if I had to guess, I have never spoken to you about this, but if I had to guess, before you picked up Shroud, before you did that first ESEA LAN, even if we'd have seen his skills, me and you, and we'd have sat down and said, like, look at this guy's skills, and like, oh, maybe he could go somewhere. If I had to guess, I'd say that the Semphis opinion would probably be like, nah, he's just bullshit. Like, he's like online as fuck. Like, I bet he does nothing at LAN. Or if I looked at like a player like Shahzam, for example, I'm pretty sure even if he had the skill to join Cloud9, you'd have been like, oh, that guy's an asshole. Like, I don't like his personality. Like, he'd never fit in our team. Like, do you see what I'm getting at? It seems like in a way you kind of have a mentality like that.
To be fair, though, I was right about Shroud. Like I had talked shit to Shroud before, like I picked him up, and he went to ESA LAN and he did bad. Like the thing is like when someone plays at LAN, you could tell he wasn't nervous. Like he wasn't really like sitting there nervous. Like he tried to do the same stuff. He just hadn't really been experienced on LAN, so like you kind of see that. But generally, when I call someone online, like I've usually been right, like 95% of the time. Like there's always the exception of someone that goes and like does well, but I think there's like like when someone has never been to a LAN, they're going to suck at their first LAN. And this isn't like some like crazy like idea. It's just a fact. Like if you've never gone to a LAN, you're going to suck at your first LAN. So to pick someone up that's never been to a LAN, I think it's a bad idea. I think it's much better to go the route that we did, where we let Shroud go and play with Monezuma, do bad, and then pick him up, and then go and boot camping, prepare him, and like have him go to a LAN, and he'll succeed a lot more from there. So I think there's merit in not picking people up and letting them like crash with other teams first before you take them. I think, at least. It's kind of like the guinea pig teams, or like how like sports have farm teams and stuff, you know. Like someone might be talented, but they need to go and get a little bit more experience before they're ready.
But can you see why from the outside? Like, that mentality is not just in the past. Like, if people look right now, okay, everyone
on top teams has that. Everyone has it on all teams. You can ask Hiko. Like, everyone thinks people are online. Whether you hear some people as vocal, like people might watch this and be like, "Oh, Semphis is an asshole. He talks shit to Shroud." A lot of people thought Shroud was online. Like, a lot of people did. It was not just me. You know, like a lot of people thought Skadoodle cheated back in the day. It's not just exclusive to like me and Hiko's team. Like, a lot of things happen, and definitely people maybe go too far with it sometimes, but I don't know. I definitely think it's like a proven thing that if you've never been to a LAN, you're gonna have to go to one or two before you really like blossom as a player.
Is this an issue, Hiko, in terms of the specific way I nailed it down?
In a way, probably. Because I think one of the problems. I'll expand just to make it clear, because Semphis has some points there. Obviously, if we talk specifically about Shroud, there are circumstances that make sense there. But if I was looking right now, Semphis can't necessarily talk to this because it's still ongoing. But me and you, Hiko, we're not in Cloud9, so we don't give a fuck about the fact that like someone might be Semphis' teammate. If I was looking at the team now, like a lot of people, I'd be calling for us to change. They'd be like, change this player, or maybe you need to, maybe who knows, maybe you need to rehaul the whole thing and bring a couple of players in. But if I look at it, if I had to put my money, I'd probably say that wouldn't happen. Like, I'd say with this philosophy and the way I've seen Cloud9 make decisions before, I'd assume if they can, they'll choose not to do it. Yet there's players out there where, listen, some of them have now been to LANs, like the P's and Team Liquid, CLG, even the fucking Neolum guys. There's a whole bunch of people where you could at least take a chance on one of them, and these aren't totally unproven players. It's not as extreme as the Shroud scenario. So what do you think on this topic? I think that if Cloud9 doesn't make a change right now, they never will. I think this is like the deciding moment for them. Like, this is the time where they, like, Cloud9 as an organization buckles down and is like, listen, guys, we need a change right now. We need to start winning. And if they don't do that, then, like, it'll never happen. Like, there's literally I don't think there's any lower than Cloud9 as a team could actually get than having the first place seed online and placing last. Like, there's literally nothing worse than that. Even going out in groups at a major, but in my opinion, isn't as bad as that. So, do I think that they actually will make the change? I hope they do. I really hope they do. I hope that, and obviously this is nothing against any of the players. It's nothing against the org at all. Like, essentially, we need to have another team in the US that can actually, like, just a clear-cut top team. Because right now, like, Cloud9, CLG, and like Elevate and Liquid, like, they're all considered like a top American team, but we don't have a clear cut right now. We don't have like that home crowd favorite that, you know, I guess Cloud9 still has most of the fan base, but it's time for them to actually kind of buckle down and decide, all right, do the thing that they always have never wanted to do, make the cuts, move on, and, you know, deal with it as it comes.
Semphis, on stream, when they were cut, when Dazed and Steel were cut from iBuyPower, I'm pretty sure, if my memory is correct, that Steel claimed to have had an offer from Cloud9. That he was like, you said, come over to join. Is that accurate?
Yeah, he got asked to join. That was when we were thinking about replacing Jordan and Anger, or that's when Brax had left. and then people.
Oh, this is way back though. I think he tried to make it
Yeah.
sound like it was recent. You mean it was like way back in the Katowice?
Yeah,
tournament,
no,
kind
it
of,
was
before
really.
he was on
It was
iPad
way back. It was right when Brax left and Jordan was in like the worst place, and
Okay.
like we kind of had me, Sean, and Hiko had kind of agreed to play with Steel and Anger if they wanted to join, but then Steel wouldn't join. He picked Abba Power, so we kept playing with Jordan and Anger because we didn't think there was better options.
Sometimes on this sort of a show, Semphis, I have to play the role of a naive outsider. I have to pretend I don't know anything about politics or what people think privately, and I have to ask a question as though I was just a naive child, just asking his dad, like, why is the sky blue, Daddy? So what I'm going to ask you now, Semphis, might sound like a laughable question to you, but when Dazed got cut from iBuyPower, why not just recruit Dazed? You know, you guys had issues with in-game leaders. There's a proven in-game leader. There's a guy who wants to win. There's a guy who's got some fragging skills. Why not recruit Dazed to Cloud9? Why is that not an option?
I don't think I don't think it really crossed our mind, to be honest. It was kind of like one of those things where like everyone kind of had a problem with Dazed. Like, don't get me wrong, I like Dazed as a person. Like, you can ask Hiko, like, talking to Dazed, he's a nice guy, you know, like he's not this giant asshole people make him out to be, like 24/7. He's just talking shit, like hating people, like making fun of people for having AIDS or something. But like he's a genuine like decent human, but when it comes to CS, he can be a real asshole. And sometimes people, like certain players, can't play with that type of leader. Like you just can't. And
I mean, isn't it you that can't play with it? It sounds like of all the people, it's you two who are the two polar opposites who can't ever be in the same team again for some reason.
No, well, I mean, like I had played with it for a year. Obviously, it worked. It was more so the fact that Dazed knew that like Jordan is late and stuff. I think, and I don't think he really wanted to play with Jordan at that time. That's just speculation. That's from what I heard, and.
Yeah.
Obviously, he had problems with me, so that's 2 out of the 4 players on the team, right?
Okay, let me ask you another naive question then. Okay, but this is Dazed who's just been cut from iBuyPower, like shockingly, like he didn't know he was going to be cut. He has nowhere to go. Couldn't that have like humbled him? Couldn't you have like broken the wild stallion then, Semphis, and brought him in and made him like, you have to be a reasonable person if you're going to join our team, dude. Like you have to have a role, and you can't just be the tyrant, you know? Couldn't you have broken him in that moment?
Well, I actually think that Dazed would be a great player to have joined our team than if he was just a player. Like, I actually think Dazed is a good player. I think the strat calling is what makes him so like different. Like when Sean was calling and Dazed was just a player, that was the best Dazed has ever played in his life.
That's like the ESWC era, right?
Yeah, and I mean, granted, the teams that we played back then and the players, you know, they weren't as good as they are now, but if Dazed was ever going to be one of the best players, he was going to not be calling and have Sean calling. I think that was like, that's a fact to me. I don't know, but
I think he even told me in an interview a while back that when he would call, he would have that problem himself. Like he would keep thinking to himself, like, I can do like the in-game style now, but it's not going to be as effective for me. Or sometimes I'm going to have to like lean away from that and play more individually. So I think he himself even acknowledges that this was like an issue for him, you know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's a skilled player. He's one of the most skilled callers, I think. But like I said, like going in first all the time and calling strats, it's hard. Like I called strats and I went in first. Like you can't be consistent. You can have very big games, but you know, especially when you're losing, you have to think more. Like, okay, what's happening? How do they rotate to beat us on this last round? Like you're putting all these things in your mind, and then a dude peeks you maybe, and maybe you aren't really fully paying attention. You know, sometimes you're in a spot where you're pretty safe, and there's a low chance you die. And then you kind of zone out, you know, just thinking of something, especially if you're opping, you know, like if you're calling a strat and you're opping T-spawn on Dusty or something, and someone throws the flash over mid and peeks you, then like you're going to die. So there's big downsides to being heavy fraggers and calling. That's why I think most teams have someone like Pronax that he's playing real, like, unconventional, you know, Mirage B just hiding in a corner. I'm pretty sure he's looking at his teammate screens the whole time that he's up there. And if someone comes, he's hoping that he gets one. And then Flush comes on, gets one, lives, and they all rotate. And his goal is not to get a 4K. You know, it's to get his team info, get his one frag, call the right things. But going back to what you said about me and Dazed fighting, it wasn't so much that Dazed hated me as like he thought I was like bad skill wise or he thought anything. He just thought like sometimes I played too aggressive, and then sometimes he thought that he was right, and I would fight him on some things. Like one of the biggest problems that me and Dazed had was if he wanted to run a certain setup or a certain T-side strat, I would be like there's a better way of doing it. And whether you want to say that I should have just gone with what my leader said or not, that's up to you. But there were times where I felt like I was ahead of the curve making a strat or something like back then. And you have to remember, this is when Go was in its early stages where everything wasn't figured out. Like there was a lot of cool things you could do with smokes, and we weren't doing them. And that was the time where Very Games was having a lot of success versus everyone but NIP doing, like some weird stuff with like maybe a 3 smoke strat on Inferno wrapping or something like that. And I felt like we weren't utilizing the Molotovs. I'm one of the first people that created that Molotov B execute on Inferno. That first orange Molotov, the tri-box Molotov with a smoke spawn, smoke spindle, and you go in B, that was something that I thought about way back in the day that we never did when Mollies were less powerful. I wanted to do stuff like that, but Days would hit me with certain things like, you can't always rely on having that much money to have like 5 smokes and 3 Molotovs. And I always said, yeah, that's fine. That's true, but we should have 2 strats, like one for if we don't have the mollies and one for when we did. And we got in a lot of fights about the fundamentals of CS and how like we should be calling. And he had his certain idea and I had mine. And I think he was right in a lot of stuff that he called, but I think we could have added a lot of stuff that, me and TCK and Frost and Hiko, we were finding these smokes and Molotovs like I talked about before, and I think we would have been ahead of every team tactically if he would have gave us a little bit more freedom, and that was where a lot of our fighting came from. Now you can make other cases where it's like, Semphis, you could have played this smarter. I mean, everyone makes fucking mistakes in CS. Like I can, the Shahzam video that Dazed made, I mean, like I can do that about Dazed. Like it's not super hard to do that, I don't think, to make a player look bad. So I don't know. It just depends on how nitpicky you want to be.
Okay, Hiko. He's kind of gotten to he's kind of unpacked a lot of it there, so obviously why they wouldn't play together, etc.
No, I never said I would never play with him again at that time.
No, why it's unlikely, though, in that particular sort of scenario that this would happen, okay. So I understand that. But in terms of you, Hiko, when you left, the way it was described, it sounded publicly like it was a situation of like, because listen, you've never directly said like, oh, this player wouldn't do this or they wouldn't do this, therefore I had to leave. But just the way you've even not said that makes it sound quite obvious. Like saying like, I want a team that has can accomplish these things, and this is I've only got these many years. It makes it sound pretty obvious that this is the problem. Okay, so when Hiko decides maybe this team isn't going the way I want it to go, why can't Hiko just say, hey guys, right, like look at what just happened to iBuy Power, it went to shit, like we'll just bring in this 1 or 2 players and we'll make our team better and it'll all be fixed and I don't have to go anywhere. Why is that not the option that ends up being picked? Was it not possible?
Ultimately, I actually think like that might have even been a thought at the time. Like Days was Team West, I think ultimately he did end up joining like Torqued or something, right? With like TCK and Frost and Monty and whoever else. But I don't think that it would have been possible. I think like in theory, yes, it would have worked. In theory, if everybody's kind of attitude was better and if everyone got along with Days, that would have been an option. Unfortunately, Corey and I both know that Days will never play with Sean. Days like Sean, but Days will never play with Sean. At that point, that means Sean has to be gone for Dazed, which I guess you could make up your argument would be, okay, well, that would be the better roster, right? That's what you would think. I don't think like that would have been the best option, knowing how Dazed was with Corey back then. I think for at least a short time, early on, it would have been okay, but I think ultimately it wouldn't have been okay. Like, I can't see Dazed and Corey ever being on a team again after how the Quanic breakup happened. I just can't see it. So at that point, then, okay, to get Dazed, you'd have to cut 2 people at least. And that's just, you might as well just reform the whole entire team.
So that, in a way, that's what you were kind of doing, that you were going to leave and make your own team with them, and it was going to be this team where it was like a mixture of iBuy Power and Hiko, right?
Let's be realistic here. iBuy Power was doing better than us, Hiko, and you knew that you could just join for steal. I mean, it was easier. Like, it was an easier option. Like,
But that
why would you
wasn't the easy
remake
option.
C9 if you could just join them? You know, like.
So that's ultimately the thought was, okay, it's easier for me to try to get out of contract and kind of go my separate route than it is to try to convince either the entire Cloud9 org to drop every player and
that's
rebuild
my point.
around
I mean,
me,
it's just easier that way.
or try to cut 2 or 3 players. Like, it's easier to do it the way I did it. And I mean, yeah. Did I leave Cloud9 to join them though? No. I mean, as I said, at the beginning of that team, I did not have a spot on that team. At the beginning of that team, they were not going to cut Nitro for me. So,
okay, but when they did, when that happened, like, I realize now it's like it's the most stupid what if ever, because we never got to fucking see the team actually play a LAN. So people can claim whatever they want. It would have been great. It would have been terrible. Whatever they want to say. Why would Hiko join that particular type of team then? If you were coming for this world where you shared some of the similar ideas they had on, like, we don't want to we can just talk while he's not here. So it sounds to me like you shared some of the ideas of Cloud9, of the ideas of, like, well, I mean, look, okay, let me put it this way. If all of us had met at a LAN any time until late 2014, we would have, me and you and Semphis would have all laughed at iBuyPower, like those idiots. They just stack aimers on top of aimers on top of aimers, and then they run and gun, and then they go to a European LAN, they play better aimers, they get their heads caved in, they go back home, they beat NA people, and they do the same thing again every time, and then they cut a player, and they bring in another aimer, and, like, it would be obvious to me and you, and I think we're right, that's like a terrible strategy, like that you'd need almost a miracle on the scale of what happened, face it, to ever have a chance to do well at a LAN, Why would Hiko join a team like this then?
Ultimately, I think it was swag. I think, like, I had like that kind of hunger to play with him again. I really, disregarding how he left my team originally and disregarding, like, anything else he did in the past, like, swag, without a doubt, was my all-time favorite and probably best teammate I've ever had. So with that being said, like, unfortunately, there was no way of him rejoining Cloud9. Unfortunately, like, there was no way that would have happened. So I was willing to deal with whatever I had to deal with to be on a team with him again. Ultimately, I think that's exactly where it kind of stemmed from.
Semphis, like I said, since that team never did play a LAN, so it's easy. Like, if you want to make fun of them, you could easily make fun of them and be like, they did terribly in that online qualifier. I think they would have bombed. Like, they made the wrong choice. If you had to honestly speculate, what do you think that super team would have been like if it actually had to exist and play real tournaments? Would it actually have lived up to the hype?
What super team? I just went to the washroom, so I didn't.
AZK, Hiko.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Skadoodle, Dazed, Swag.
Well, this is something I was going to touch on, regardless of if you brought it up or not. But I personally think that, like, I just want to straight up say that I think Dazed runs one of the best CT-sided teams in the game. Like, in terms of, like, smoke timings, utilizing offers to push certain spots, having over rotates for certain teams, exploiting holes, and, like, all right, this team's gonna go heavy mid, there's no point of even playing halls, no one's coming out halls. Brax just
continue your point
from where I left off. Or
you were just saying, let me think, I think you just said the part about him being the best at running CT teams and, like, knowing, like, when someone's not going to come to a certain spot, so you abandon that. Okay, we got all that. Keep going.
All right, so basically, I think he runs, like, really good CT sides, and even when we were on my team, he tried really hard to put us in, like, a lot of, like, predetermined spots on CT and stuff, and I think, like, that's sometimes where we had disagreements with, and, like, looking back, like, he was right on some of the stuff he said, but I was also right on some of the stuff I said. So I think, like, back then when we were on a team together, we both were idiots, I think, at times when we had some of our fights, and I definitely think, like, we both made mistakes, but just going back to, like, his current system is, to be honest, I never thought Dazed T-sides were really that awesome. Like, when he was at big tournaments, he was getting, like, one round sometimes on T-sides. He wasn't having that much impact, not until Steel quit the team. When Steel quit the team, he basically said, I don't enjoy playing with you guys. Skadoodle and Swag never talk. It's not chill playing with them. I'd rather play on a team that I enjoy playing with. Like after prac, you're not just chilling with the Iowa Power guys and Mumble just talking. And that's what Steele wanted. He wanted to be playing with like TCK and Monty, people that he liked playing with, like had fun playing with. So basically he told the team that he was going to quit after, the major, which I guess he ended up getting cut before he even could go to it. But he said, like, you have this many tournaments out of me, then I'm done. You pick up whoever you want. I'm going to make my own team. He said that this is the time that Iowa Power became the best it's ever been. This is the time where Iowa Power really just everything started working for them. They started having better T sides. Their CT sides remained relatively the same just because they've always had strong CT sides. But one thing that did change is Steele's attitude towards the game. Now, when they'd be doing a mid-B split on Dust 2 or something, someone would Molotov like the window. He would just run through the Molotov and kill the guy back flat. Like he was making huge plays for them. And he was winning them like a lot of T-side rounds. CT side, he was buying CT auto snipers all the fucking time. You can ask Hiko what it was like playing with those guys.
Like, is the suggestion here that because he knew he was gone, he kind of didn't give a fuck, and he was like, I'm going to play the way I'm going to play. And
basically he didn't follow Dazed like protocols anymore because he was leaving. So it didn't. If he runs through a Molotov and dies, and Dazed is like, what are you doing? Dazed, he's just like, well, whatever. Like, I'm not getting cut. Like it doesn't matter. Like
okay.
There's no downside to him doing anything other than maybe like if he doesn't want to hear the complaining. CT autos. Now Dazed loves CT autos. Like he advocates buying them all the time, but Steele never bought them as much as he did then. Up until he said he was quitting. He would buy an op, like first gun round on cash, hold that, maybe he gets one, dies. Next round he drops an auto, he opts like the try box in the back of cash. Like that shit is hard to play with versus when you're not sure if you're playing versus an M4, an op, or an auto. When that shit's getting rotated out, like if someone always has an auto sniper, it's not that hard. You go and send an op after him. The op will get hit one time and he'll kill the guy with the auto. Most top teams understand this. If someone has an op, it's a 50-50 op battle. Okay, everyone understands this. When it's a rifler, you know how to play, but when it's like the three rotating out all the time, it becomes a lot harder to gauge like when you should do something to stop it. And he made huge impacts when we played them. Now, we beat them in one best of 3 at Sevo Land, but you can ask Hiko, we had their money fucked the entire time we played them. Like, we won pistol, lost the eco, I one-deeg like 3 people on train, and they're broke the rest of the half. Those succession of rounds were why we beat them, basically. It's just because they kept trying to buy, just Colts, and they can't hang. To me, they couldn't hang 5 rifles versus 5 rifles, like that lineup versus like our lineups versus each other. No way. They'll never beat 5 rifles versus 5 rifles versus us. We were the superior rifle team, in my opinion. But once they start getting money, mollies, smokes, ops, and autos, they clearly were the favorite in my opinion.
So this is mainly like you're kind of outlining Dazed's style and how it changed. How does this fit into how you actually think that lineup would have done?
Now, so when Hiko joins, the problem would have been, in my opinion, is the same thing that we would have had at the start of Complexity. You have Brax and Hiko on the same team again. Now, whether Dazed is going to be able to fix that easier than we did and it's going to take less time, I don't know. Well, it's hard to say, but from what I know of playing with both of them, it's a unique situation, and if he's expecting the same stuff he got out of Steel at the end, where like Brax is going to be playing the Steel role, which is what Brax was doing. Brax was playing small sites. Brax was doing the kind of more of like the role Steel is in, and we all know that Brax isn't nearly as aggressive as Steel. So if Dace was expecting that kind of stuff, it wasn't going to go well. If he knew that and he had planned for it. You never know. It's hard to say. Like Navi plays super, super, super slow, and they're really effective. So, like I said, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have been good, because for all we know, they could have been. Like Navi's successful being that slow, but I don't know. I definitely
there's limitations to it.
It wasn't like oh my god, Hiko's better than Steel, so therefore the team is double the skill type thing in my mind, just because of how I saw Steel playing. Like Hiko for sure is a better player than Steel. There's no doubt in my mind. He has better aim and stuff, and better, I don't know, like he's better team player. But the stuff Steel was doing from playing him and watching him, I just think that's a lot different than what they were getting with that roster is all.
Semphis, like when I ask you this question now, I'm not gonna like super hard press you and be like, that's all bullshit what you're saying, and like you just give me a political answer now. it's going to be difficult to talk to you now about Shahzam because he is technically still in your team. As far as I know, he's still a member. I don't know any inside information, and I have to assume that there's nothing wrong there. He's still just a member of the team. But when you were mentioning now that Dazed made that video and like, oh, I could make that about anyone, this is something that's been a common complaint. People say, right, well, obviously Dazed doesn't like Shahzam for obvious reasons as to why those two sorts of personalities wouldn't get along, and he's looked at Shahzam, and Shahzam's had problems in some of these games, and so he's picked him apart, he's made this video, and he's gone in depth, etc. I think you're selling it a bit too hard the other way there. Like saying, oh, I could make that video about Dazed, I could make it about anyone. Mate, did you watch some of those videos? Like, I don't think he was wrong in some of those. Like, especially that one where, I think it was the overpass one. I mean, he's right. Like, Shahzam literally had a whole game where he had zero impact on the game, except to die. Like, I don't dislike Shahzam, I don't even know him as a person, but I think that would be worse than any video you could make of a big match that was had Dazed or a similar player that you might choose, you know. Come on, man, that was pretty terrible.
I think Dazed had points in the video. I mean, like when you
okay, a great example
that,
would be
generally you're right. You know, like you're not making a video and you're going to give wrong information. Like you watch the video and, you know, like we knew and Shahzam apologized, you know, after for making some of those plays. The only saving grace I can really say about the video is just that we were telling our teammates to play with confidence in that match. Like on that specific map, like if he would have made one for Inferno or Nuke or like any of the other maps, it would have been different to me just because like in that overpass, that was the one time we played with this team and said basically to kill people. You know what I mean? Like we were saying, like we weren't confident on overpass. That's what people don't understand. Is like we didn't think we were the better team than TSM when we played them on overpass. Now when we played them on Nuke, we had a lot of confidence in our Nuke. We thought like, okay, we ended up getting fucking 2 rounds on T side, but honestly, like that's T-side Nuke sometimes. It's hard to get rounds. But when we went versus TSM, we had a lot of confidence. Even when we started getting pistol beaks to come back, we knew we could fucking do it. We knew we could do it. We knew we could beat them on Nuke. We had watched their demos on Nuke. We have seen what they do. We know what we're capable of. We played versus Pro on Inferno. We've done that before. Now, if he would have done some of the dumb shit in those matches, or I would have, or anyone, I would have been in a much different mindset than Overpass, where it's like, some of those mistakes are fucking pretty common sense. Like, okay, it's a 1v3, play smart. My point is just that we went in the match kind of saying that, like, if you think you can kill someone, kill them, just because we didn't think we'd win without, like, individual performances of, like, hitting shots. That's my only thing I can really say about it, is that we basically thought we were going to lose before we played that map.
Like, what do you think, Hiko, on this topic, Shahzam in Cloud9?
I think that they took a big risk in going with Shahzam, and they didn't really have any other options, honestly. Like, they could have had JDM, but it was like a toss-up. It was like a 50-50, you know, which one do you go for? And I actually had higher hopes for what they would have been able to do without me. I mean, Sean was very adamant about not wanting to op. And Jordan was very adamant about maybe trying to start like lurking a little bit more. And Shroud was really adamant about not being a lurker anymore. So in my mind, I thought, well, look, Shahzam will fit the role that they need so that everybody will be somewhat comfortable. Obviously now Corey ends up having to lurk, which isn't what he wants to do. But the other 4 players should, in theory, be confident, and in theory be comfortable with what they're actually being asked to do. Now, obviously, Shahzam is a risk because he definitely was not a land-proven player. He had that one good land against us when we were just on that huge kind of spree.
ESEA.
Yeah, exactly. We were on that, like, we just lost 3 events. We didn't want to end up even going to ESEA. We ended up coming back from, I think, Sweden for like a week, and then we just went to ESEA. So, like, do I think that Shahzam turned out to be exactly what they wanted? No. I think they wanted him to be a bit more of a... He definitely has like that Michael aggressive style of opping that if he is actually able to hit his shots, and if he's able to actually play smart, I think he would have done wonders for this team. Unfortunately, that's not the way it turned out. He definitely has not proven to be what he was at that ESA when he beat us. And I think that without, like, is there any really coming back from that? I don't know. It might already be too late. I don't know.
Like, if I look at the way he's... Okay, I'm going to actually do a video about the NA scene coming up, where I'm watching all the games, still trying to get as much info as I can, so I can be really accurate if I have to criticize someone. But from the games I have seen of Shahzam, I've seen him play most of the international games and some of the ESEA ones recently, as in with Cloud9. I have to be honest, Hiko, what I saw in the Dazed videos there is pretty much what I've been seeing in most of those games. Like, it's not even not fragging. I even said before, what's funny is when I look at his best game he had, which was actually probably the nuke game against NIP, where they beat them at MLG. In this game, even in that one, it's not like he dropped 30 or whatever. He just got the key kills, okay? He went one-on-one with Makalele, he got like a key pick that opens the round up, or just opens a site up, which is obviously super key on T-side of nuke. But when I look at the rest of his game, it's not even that he's not just hitting the shots. In general, yeah, he's not getting a lot of big frags, but if you look at the style that Cloud9's playing, it's not like people will think when they watch the ESL Katowice FP or VOD, like, oh, it's just because they have shit tactics and they don't have any communication. No, that's actually not the problem with Cloud9. They're good at that. Like, actually, they get entries to sites, they get they have really good smokes and like interesting approaches to what they do on a buy round. That's why on maps like Cash, they were getting all these T rounds. So they would get into a site, they would get into a scenario that's like an end game scenario, like a 2v3 or a 3v3 or a 1v1. And this is where it felt like Shahzam always made the wrong choice. Like, that's where he didn't fit to me. It's like he'd always make the boneheaded super early peak that then puts you into like a 2v2 when it should have been a 3v2, you know. Like if you're someone who's really good, you can make that and you're going to hit it enough that it makes it like we can forgive it. It's like, it's just your style, you know. But if you miss and you're doing that again and again, like, that's kind of unforgivable in a way to me. What do you think?
No, I would agree. I think, like, going back to that overpass one, like, I think there were like 3 rounds in a row that I remember sitting in Poland against when they were playing TS7, just being like, here goes Shahzam. I bet you he's going to push down the stairs and get triple nated. There it is, got triple nated. And like, he would always like repeak. And like, I guess it's still, I don't think it's fair to really blame all of their recent results on Shahzam specifically.
No, of course
because
not.
It's definitely not only him. But I do think that the way they're playing, the way they're kind of sending him in to get a pick, and the way he's dying, it's just not working for them. And I think whether that means they need to redo all their strats to make him a more passive upper, or whether they just need to replace Shahzam with somebody that will hit those shots, or whether they just replace Shahzam with a more passive upper in general and just, you know, kind of work the team that way. I think that would probably be like the best options, you know, the best case scenario at this point in time.
SEMPHIS.
To be fair, I sucked at ESA LAN. That was one of my worst LANs so far, I think. But
okay, let me bring that up then. I'm not just making this all about, like, this isn't a segment like why we should cut Shahzam. So to talk about Cloud9 as a team in general, SEMPHIS, how can a team lose a cash game in which nothing drops 50? How is that possible?
Are you talking about versus Orbit?
Yeah. How's that possible?
That LAN was just fuck that LAN. Like we had 2 people with our keyboards on our laps. I mean, I'm sitting there with my keyboard on my lap, my mouse pad in front, my monitor. Shroud's doing the same thing. That was the first BO3 we played, and it just felt weird, man. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, we eventually like kind of got better the longer the tournament went on. Okay. And started to be able to frag with it, but Jordan, Sean, and Shahzam both had tons of mouse pad room, so. I don't know. Like, I don't know. You can ask Hiko. Usually when we're at a LAN, like, I'm that guy that takes the shitty spot on a table or something, like when there's like a bar, or I have been at least lately, and like there's just, I don't know. I've just been kind of trying to fill whatever they want me to do type role on this.
So when
team.
you did that rematch against Orbit and you were wrecking them and you were dropping like 25 on cobblestone, you were just doing it like Russian Quake style with like the keyboard on your lap.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so that's props then. That was even better, right?
Yeah.
You were just balling out of control with your keyboard on your mouth. Okay. So going forward,
that was my biggest problem with the LAN. Is like, honestly, like when I said fuck Gfinity, like it wasn't so much like the venue was nice, everyone was cool. It was just like they gave us a 4-man COD booth when they used controllers. I mean, like, what else to say? Like, it's gonna be fixed for the next one and stuff, but I just it felt bad.
Is there an easy solution inside SEMPHIS? Is there an obvious thing that everyone, you don't have to say it here, but is there something within Cloud9 that everyone knows, like, this is all we have to change, and if we just get on this track, you know, we'll reach all the potential things we could in, and we'll be back, you know, we'll make that major final that we should have back at Cologne when that bullshit NIP team beat us. Is there an easy track to fixing all this, SEMPHIS?
I don't think it's going to be easy, but I think it's fixable. I think the main thing on our team is people need to be vocal on what they would want to do and what they don't want to do. I think you can ask Hiko, the biggest problem you have in CS is people that are too are fine with doing like, oh no, it's fine, I'll do this. Like, no, it's fine, I'll do that. You know, like sometimes people need their spots and they need their T-side roles, and if you're not comfortable doing something, it's not good. There's certain players on a team that should be able to morph into a role better than others. Like, you don't want like someone like Jordan or Shroud doing stuff they're not comfortable with. You want them being in like a comfy spot. So I don't know, like I just said that, like, you know, you guys have probably heard me say like I'm not the best lurker right now. Like, if they want me to continue lurking, I'm not going to complain about it. I'll keep working at it. That's fine. But I definitely think that I'm better utilized going in like first or second, like being like more aggressive. Do I think I fucked up lurking at this LAN? Not like, I didn't feel like I did anything like that wrong. Like, I think maybe I got megged in the holes one time or something on Inferno, but it just felt like I didn't make that much of an impact. I didn't feel like I was like a detriment to the team. I just felt like I wasn't making, I'm not the biggest, most likely person to win like a 1 versus 3 or something, you know? Like, I'm more likely to get a 3K running through a smoke or something than I am clutching the 1 versus 3. I don't know.
Hiko, how do we fix, just you and me here, buddy, how do we fix 1, Cloud9, and 2, NA? And you're not allowed to say as an answer, like, coming soon in 6 months, featuring NVIDIA and Twitch. Like, you're not allowed to say any of that shit. Like, how do we fix these two now? Because they sound like it's the same scenario in a way. Like, if Cloud9's fixed, NA itself will have a natural hierarchy. Because what doesn't make sense right now is it's one thing that Team Liquid and these other teams can be close to Cloud9's level, but it's quite another when, like, Elevate, Nihilum, when these teams are close, that's when you know there's some sort of an issue within the scene, you know? So how do we fix these two things?
I think, in theory, recently it's gotten better. I saw that we started actually using the Facebook group, and people are starting to play out more, and people are actually scheduling their scrims. So in terms of practice, yes, there's not, you know, that much diversity of teams and the way that people play, but there's decent practice going on right now. I think it's going to take a roster shakeup. I hate to use that term because I hate when people are like, oh, the NA roster shakeup is coming or whatever. And I've actually already used that term. But I think that's what's going to take. Like, Cloud9 needs to go, like, they need to relook at the, you know, their roster. They need to, you know, go back to the fundamentals and rework their team completely. I don't know if maybe like Jordan, Corey, and Sean kind of have gotten stale, and it's just, you know, there's no new thought process coming in. I know I've actually heard from a few people that like Sean and Jordan are starting to like start yelling at their teammates and like get pretty nasty with them, which obviously is not the way that, you know, when I was in the team, that was never how it would happen. So a fresh set of eyes, kind of a fresh breath, a fresh, you know, a wind blowing into the scene. Maybe you see some of these people like Nihilum, and you see some of these teams like CLG, Liquid, Elevate. Like, they do have semi-promising players. Now, are you going to recruit one of them and say like, oh, you know, I guarantee this player is going to be insane the next line? Probably not. But it's something that you have to consider, and it's something that I think really is needed right now. There just needs to be new rosters. The last roster shakeup, which is when I guess I left Cloud9, like, teams kind of there are some weird rosters right now. Like, it's Liquid, like that's like a weird roster. Like, DAPS should have been gone a long time ago. Elevate has like a weird roster. CLG, I hear they're making a roster change pretty soon. Who else is there? Nihilum actually is like, Nihilum is one of those teams that I think is like a fresher breath, like a new team that's just getting into the scene. They don't have necessarily the most experienced people, but they were able to actually show some promise. Like, yes, they did end up not making it past any of the European teams, but I think in terms of those players and where they were before that LAN, I think their worth went up a lot that LAN.
So okay.
Go ahead.
Hiko, professional streamer, guy who's always doing publicity stuff. I have to ask you this question, because in theory you're one of the most experienced streamers. You know a lot about that side of the business. It's obviously still a burgeoning thing in CSGO. You know the outside perspective that goes along with like looking at the FPVOD from Katowice and go, oh, they don't even know Strats. Is people took all these conclusions, right? They don't know Strats, that must mean they don't work on Strats. They don't work on Strats, that means they're not doing practice. They don't practice, that means they're doing other things. So then people's obvious like jump to a conclusion is like, right, I guess they only care about streaming, and you know, they all get lots of salaries, they don't care about winning. I mean, I realize it can't be as black and white as that, but as an outsider who's not in Cloud9, is there something to any of that?
In theory, maybe. And I will call out Shroud for this, but I don't think it's necessarily as bad as people think that it is. One thing that I've actually talked to a few people about is if you actually look at the way Shroud played, at least before I left the team, and like, so right before I left, and then right when he joined, in my mind, like looking back at those episodes, I actually have gone back and watched, like compared how he was early on the team to how he was right when I left. He's like the same player. Like he makes like the same mistakes. He does like the same thing as always. Like he's not a dynamic player, which in theory could work because he has such good aim and because he does have the most potential. But ultimately, like one thing that really rustled my jimmies, we'll say, is the fact that you have Shroud on your team who, as I would agree with Corey, like Shroud was on the road to be the best player in NA. I still think Shroud has the most potential, and I still think that maybe even now Shroud could be one of the best players in the world. The problem that really got to me was we would practice until like midnight Eastern time, and then Shroud would stream for like the next 10 hours, and then he would show up and like right before practice be really tired. You know when you just wake up, your voice is really deep and you don't really want to talk and you're quiet. He'd have that going on, and again, that's not a big deal. Everyone's done it. Corey has done it before. I've done it before. Like waking up right before practice isn't that big of a deal. But when you're not using your time more wisely, like obviously grinding out matchmaking games and grinding out EC pugs is not. You're not going to get better doing that. Like you'll get better aim, but your overall worth for a team won't necessarily get better. So I would have liked to see someone like Shroud maybe dedicate a little bit more time to going back and analyzing his demos, going back and like playing in like 10-mans even, but playing on stream against like what I would call puggers, people that are really low skill that just go in ESA pugs and just try to go for like these movie clips and they try to make these crazy plays. They're trying so hard to like beat you. Like it doesn't make you any better. So while I do think that is actually a problem, I don't think it's as big as a problem as people make it think. Like I don't actually think like, oh, Shroud sucks because he just streams all the time. Like it's not as black as white as you said.
Yeah. What do you think, Semphis? Because I mean, I want to give you a chance to address that, because that's like at the moment one of the things that people who are, it's not even people who are haters of Cloud9 do. Some of it's Cloud9 fans who just are frustrated. They don't know what Cloud9 could do to improve, so they look at that and they think, right, that's an issue. Maybe the guys are like, maybe they're too comfortable. Maybe now they've got a nice salary, they're not willing to do anything to win, or all that sort of thing. What do you think? What is your take on it?
I think with the Shroud situation, it's a little bit different just because he would be gaming anyways. Like I think regardless of if he was, he's not going to the gym or like doing anything like extracurricular, but he would be gaming no matter what. So in that sense, I think it's fine. I do agree with Hiko. Like when you wake up right before prac, I've done it. Dazed has done it. Hiko's done it. Like when you get in that pattern, you're groggy in the first hour. You're worthless. You're a worthless teammate, basically. Like you're there, but that's it. Like you're playing. You don't even really care about the first scrim. You're kind of like waking up. You got to probably still make food, get coffee, have a shower, and that's always going to affect it a little bit. But as for the amount of time he plays, I don't really think that affects him that much. I do agree that like playing pugs does give you a little bit of bad habits. That's why I try not to pug too much. But I mean, there's not always a lot of options when you're playing at fucking 4 a.m. I guess.
Well, also like a part two to what he just said is like back then when we'd show up, we'd find a scrim like right away. We'd play one scrim immediately, and then we would literally be waiting for like the next 3 hours. So it might not sound like that one scrim where Shroud isn't carrying or Shroud's not fully awake or he's hungry. Like it might sound like that doesn't make a big difference, but back then that was our entire night. Like that was literally the entire night of practice was like that one scrim where Shroud doesn't really he's not fully awake, and Jordan might be like eating while we're playing and whatever else. Like it was just like a bunch of little things that first scrim happened, and then we just wouldn't have any practice.
Right, we're on a clock here, so what we're going to do is we're going to end on a good note. Okay, we're going to feel good at the end of this chat. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask Semphis Semphis, all I want you to explain to me is how Cloud9 was going to make the final of that ESL 1 Cologne. You know, the one where Nip bullshitted you on the cobblestone and like at the last second. If you guys win that, you would have beat LDLC, right? You would have made the final. You would have. What would have happened, do you think? Give me your perspective. I'm just going to sit back with a pina colada and put my feet up and I just want to listen. So just tell me what would have happened.
So we get to the finals. We lose versus Fnatic.
You would have definitely beaten LDLC, though, right?
I actually think we would have beat LDLC.
Yeah. No, I agree. So, yeah.
What else do you want me to say about this?
So you would have beaten LDLC. There's one statement. Yeah. Would you have beaten Fnatic, do you think? What are they were like at the time?
I don't think we would have beat Fnatic. I think, like, the only way that we would have beat Fnatic is if we did the shit where we're like, fuck our strats, fuck our setups, let's man mode. And, like, we, like, literally all went and, like, you know, we just fought them and just gave them no respect and we would have had to hit our shots and beat them. Because I think, almost, you can ask Hiko, every time we've ever played Fnatic and we try to run our strats, it has never worked. Not a single time has it worked. And this isn't me saying like, oh, those are bad strats or something, but they're very good when they know how you play. Like if they watch your demo and they see tendencies, they're not the type of team that's like, okay, they take halls, so if they take halls, they do this. They're like, oh, they take halls like this? Let's go fucking kill them. Like, let's kill them in the halls. You know what I mean? Like, they're not pussies when they know what you do. They will go and kill you. They'll come to you and fight you. Like, it's not like other teams that anti-strat. Other teams anti-strat, like, they think, okay, they take halls control. When they have halls control, they generally come A. So we'll stack A with 4 people when they have halls control. When they don't take halls control, they generally go B. So we'll stack B. No, they're not like that. They bring the fight to you. So it's a lot different mindset by those guys.
Hiko, what do you think? Would you have made the final?
I would like to believe so. Like that was probably the best event I've had ever.
We've all seen the same like 2 clips like 700 times now. Don't worry, bro.
So I mean, I would like to think like that cobble was so close, and if we would have beat that, it would have made us feel so good going into LDLC. Like I think we everybody on the team at the time would have put NIP above LDLC. So going into playing LDLC after that, we would have been like, oh, okay, this is gonna be like a breath of fresh air. Like we just beat like the hardest team that there is here, and the team that has always knocked us out of every major so far. So I would have liked to think. I would like to think that if we kept that momentum and we end up beating NIP, we would have made it to the finals.
Because the thing is, I think that was the real best chance for your team in all the years. And the reason that sucks that you didn't make it beyond the quarterfinals is that it makes people think, like I said before, when they're thinking of like the 2 different philosophies of the iBuyPower approach, the Cloud9 approach, people can naively think now, well, I guess in the end the iBuyPower won because they made the final of that face it. But it's like, no, it actually would have still been a good debate. Like you would have made the final of a major, they'd have made the final of something that wasn't even a major. They'd have still gone out, you know. So it would have actually still been a cool debate. Anyway, we have to finish here, so it's been pretty good. Thanks to everyone's sponsors. Hiko has some. Do you want to, in fact, mention them if you want? Do you want to mention anyone, Hiko?
Sure. NVIDIA. Shout out to NVIDIA.
Shout
out to NVIDIA. Semphis, you have anyone you want to thank?
Yeah, I got a couple here. We got a nice G2A, Logitech, ZAM, BenQ, HyperX, Alienware, HEC, LOL Class, Need for Seat, NVIDIA, and Overwolf.
Okay, yeah, he's not at all comfortable, you know, he's not living like a relaxed life. He's literally leaning back in a chair while he says all that shit, reading it off his screen, but okay, fair play. Right, we'll end on that note. So
that's just crazy memory, honestly, but yeah, later, guys.